Welcome back. So this is an exciting session I have been planning with these ladies that you see here. So they approached me and asked me to do a panel for Dev Days, and I thought, what's something that's really interesting and that isn't hyper technical for me so I can actually keep up with everybody. And I thought, let's talk about war stories. Let's get real. Let's talk about what we're learning, how we're struggling, what we're seeing. And so I assembled a really great, well-rounded group of women that I am so proud and excited to be having this conversation with. So let's go ahead and get it started. I will start with introductions. We have Jordan Looper, who is a professional services manager at SailPoint. Or sorry, that's Maria. So we have a senior cloud support engineer at SailPoint. Then we have Maria Panola, who is the professional services manager at SailPoint. We have Shivari Bharatia, who's a lead IAM engineer at CyberSolve. And then we have Alicia Gachow, who is an identity security advisor, architect, and team lead at Clango. So I want to go ahead and get the conversation started, and let's just give everyone a general introduction into you and what's your experience level in identity. So Jordan, I'll start with you since you're to my right. Go ahead and give us an introduction.
I have been with, I guess it's ISC now, but IDN support. I'm a senior cloud support engineer. I think I've been with SailPoint about 3 years now, and prior to that, I also worked in technical support for application servers for about 4 years, and then before that, I was a developer for a couple years. So.
Very cool. Maria, how long have you been?
In IT, almost 20 years. Yeah. Makes me feel a little bit old. In identity security space for about 4 years.
Nice. Okay.
Now. And I guess as part of my role, professional services manager, what I do is manage an amazing team of identity security professionals. Definitely my favorite part of the job. Any day I do professional services sales, which is, scoping projects, but also advising customers on their roadmaps, on their projects, identity projects, and then of course I oversee the projects that have that SailPoint delivers within my territory. So that's kind of what I do.
Hey, Shivari.
Yep. So I've been in IT around 16 years now, and then mostly in the identity security space since around I would say roughly 10 years.
Yeah.
And most of it has been navigating with SailPoint. So now ISC, but mostly focusing on IAQ and IDN. So we help a lot of organizations build, deploy, and maintain their IAM solutions.
Awesome. Yeah. And you guys may recognize Shivari. She was part of a talk yesterday. And then I think her name is probably very familiar within the developer community itself. And same with Alicia. So Alicia, do you also want to intro?
So my name is Alicia Gachow. I've been working in identity and access management for over 20 years. Starting with experience with a single client, owning their IAM platform and managing everything from resources to projects. And now I'm working with Clango, where I go in with various customers as an advisor, as an architect, helping them figure out the next step in their journey.
That's awesome. I actually want to start with you as we move into our first question. You have such an impressive background and identity, and so I would love to hear from your perspective. How have you seen the conversation around identity evolve over the years?
I think in the beginning, it was really about just making the identity problem go away. How fast can you create accounts? Can you automate password change so the help desk doesn't have to deal with it? And it was not really seen of added value, right? It was just keep the lights running. And over the last few years in particular, identity security has really become more prominent. People are recognizing the role of identity in the overall cybersecurity landscape. Business leaders are becoming more in tune. They're asking questions about what are we doing about identity? How does this fit in? Maybe because they don't want to be on the headlines, but they never are asking those questions before. And you have companies that are really trying to figure out what the next place is for identity and how it's going to help them in their journey. And we see a lot of innovation. And that's what's so neat about where SailPoint is, where this conference is to see all the different ideas coming together to really make a platform that's really going to help the customer, regardless of their situation, their circumstance, their size, be able to control their destiny.
Yeah. Are you seeing the same thing, Shibari?
Yes. So like overall, we've seen a lot of customers make the shift. They are now trying to prioritize their identity security program, and mostly the key factors trying to drive that is the increased security threats, obviously, and then regulatory compliance we have, and that's what really drives. So basically, when we are at the front line, right, we are at war, and then they have a saying in Game of Thrones, like winter is coming. Yeah. So in cybersecurity, we have something like a breach is inevitable. Yeah. So you got to prepare for it, and then it's not only just about protecting your data. So you kind of have to build a fortress around it. You have to have good governance policies and everything driving the program together. And that's what when you have a good program in place, you'll start to see good business impacts. Yeah. Like, you'll have increased efficiency, you'll have enhanced user policies, controls, and, it will just make things better for organizations. They are going to reduce security risks, and that's what will, eventually translate into the business impact that they're going to see. Yeah. So definitely, like, prioritizing it's I think business imperative now. Yeah. Right?
Jordan, you've been with SailPoint for about 4 years. Are you seeing similar trends when you're working in support?
Yeah, I think probably my perspective is a little different because people usually come to me when they're having an issue or they have questions. So I think a lot of times the thing that I'm most concerned about is what are these things about how they're using their identity management that are like common issues that they run into or things that they could be doing better so that I can provide some guidance to them on how they could maybe change their processes or configuration or things like that. So really that's kind of where my perspective comes from a little bit more. I have a couple of war stories I can probably share a little bit later whenever we get into that.
Yeah, that's the meat that we'll be getting into. Yeah. So I have one interesting question that someone flagged this one for me right before we came on, but I think something that I want to pose to this group, and this is to everybody, but what are some misconceptions or misunderstandings about identity that you run into? Anything that you guys are seeing?
A lot of people seem to think it's just password management, where it's a lot more than that. I mean, it's all about access management and least permissions needed and siloing things so that people don't have improper access and separation of duty policies and stuff like that. It's a lot more complex than just password management. But
yeah, Maria, did you have any thoughts there?
Totally agree. I mean, it's a broad solution. It addresses many things, and my vantage point, of course, comes from the projects, delivering them, overseeing them. So definitely seeing the increased priority in customers, and it is becoming a strategic project for a lot of our customers.
Yeah,
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we're still seeing is that IT can do identity by itself. And while IT has to have a role in implementing the technology, they have to have their partners that know the business processes and business problems to be able to make the solution truly effective. Yeah. And we continue to have this conversation, and it seems like it makes logical sense to me, but it's hard to get that meaningful interaction. But on the other side, when we are able to get with those stakeholders, we're almost building a bridge that they see, oh, this really can enable my team. This really can improve their experience, and they become really supportive of the process. So it really drives a better outcome if we can just get them started.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. I do see that a lot on the project front as well. Is it can be a challenge to get the stakeholders to engage, at least initially, but I agree. I mean, it is after probably the first go live, after they start seeing the benefits, when the attitude starts changing.
Yep. And as both of you said, it's not just an IT job. It's, I think, you also need a conscious, security conscious workforce to go along with it. Because if you understand what has to be done, only that's when you're going to know what has to be done, and then how you just keep on continuously managing it. It's not like you just set up an IAM tool like hey, I bought SailPoint and I have it up and running, but you need to use all the best practices, have things in place for it to actually work for you, and do what you are expected to.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
You need to have a conscious workforce for that.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good segue into the war stories. So when people are not terribly conscious of it, one of the things that I wanted to explore with y'all is just talking through, okay, let's talk about things that went really well, or maybe things that haven't gone well, and then let's sort of suss out some learnings or best practices from there. So again, I'm going to pose this question to the group, but just say, can you tell me about a project that you were part of that was really successful? What did you learn from that experience? What can we all take away? Let's start with a positive.
I would say, a lot of times in support, we don't really do a bunch of like implementation and setup things. But one of the most satisfying projects that I've worked on was because I'm our API SME on the support team, or a subject matter expert. I like to help customers a little bit more with setting up the API endpoints, just because it's something that I enjoy. And so I got to help someone build out some scripting for a custom report based on some of our API endpoints, and that was a really satisfying project for me.
Maria, do you find you are on the implementation front? Yeah.
I am, yes, and I mean, gosh, there's just so many projects that I'm really proud of. Yeah. Definitely not the easiest ones always that make me the happiest and ultimately the most proud. Of course, there's the really big ones. So a really big project going live, it's a huge milestone. It's always like a proud moment. But there's actually a project, a very recent one that I'm just immensely proud of. It was a migration from another platform to Identity Security Cloud. And it was a customer self-implementation. We were in a supportive role for that, but it was the customer hands-on keyboard, even though they didn't have a prior experience from Identity Security Cloud. So that was very exciting. But what made it really, really special is the project went live in 2 weeks, start to finish.
What?
It was amazing.
That is crazy.
It was amazing. And I mean, thinking about the kind of the lessons learned from that, it was really, I think, the success criteria of any other project. It was just supercharged in that project. It was obviously going into the project, the requirements were crystal clear to the customer. The team was small but very smart, very dedicated and technical, very motivated and really, determined on keeping that very challenging timeline. And then also willing to compromise. There were a lot of other things that they wanted to include, but again, 2 weeks. They were willing to compromise, really focus on what needs to be in that initial go live, and remembering and understanding it's going to be a long roadmap. This is the first go live. And then, of course, I mean, for 2 weeks, it was a relatively standard solution out of the box that they implemented. But still, it was amazing, and I was so proud.
Yeah. Do you think you'll see more of that? Are there learnings you took from that for future implementations that you can hopefully replicate that time to value?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, all of those things were something. I mean, I wouldn't aim for 2 weeks ever. But I mean, those are the kind of things. I mean, I think it's really always about thinking about time to value. About it doesn't have to be all at once. It is what do we do first that we start experiencing those benefits as early on as possible and then continuing from there. So I think a lot of good learnings.
Nice. Shivari, Alicia, with your robust experience, any memorable projects?
I think the best one that comes to mind was an upgrade project. And the service desk manager came like the next week and she said, we got no tickets. No one noticed. Wow. And I think that really comes down to what we strive for. Sometimes it seems unattainable in every situation because there are so many complications and so many wishes, but it is possible, right? If we know the requirements, if we have a good team, if we plan and manage the project well, we can not have a negative impact, which sometimes is where we end up. We want to have that, oh, no one noticed, so that's my favorite.
Yeah. No news is good news.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is.
Anything from you, Shivari?
So, I mean, as a working as a developer, we do a lot of deployments, and over the years we've done many, but like definitely not the shortest one. I think in 2 weeks we always plan to have like phased go live. So we aim for like somewhere between 3 months and so. And our lessons learned is always to, you know, instead of doing a big bang, always go for like shorter and phased implementations. Like, you know, you do a few things first, get your authoritative sources on, and then you plan for the other target sources, and then, you know, that's what definitely helps you streamline all the processes, you know, automate stuff, and then, you know, just follow all the best practices. Because if you try to, you know, compromise on the time taken to implementation, you might compromise on the best practices, and you might, you know, end up not having the best process in place, and that's definitely not what you want to do, right? Because if you do it straight or right the first time along, that takes you a long way, where, you know, you don't have to keep coming back to it and keep fixing it.
Right? So in those times when it doesn't go as well, or you do have to fix it, how are you mitigating that?
So, I mean, we just we always try to, you know, do the regular CI/CD pipelines. We will work our way through, okay, what's the requirement, how do we go about it, and can we speed it up, or, you know, just try to follow the process still. Yeah, and it takes whatever time it takes.
Yeah.
Rework takes time.
Yep, definitely.
I think for me, we can do our best job going through the implementation project. We can plan, we can test, and we can have an expectation of what that go live looks like. But sometimes it just doesn't work out for some reason. Data comes early, or there was something that wasn't documented, or something that we couldn't have planned for. And I think in those inevitable situations, the best thing is triaging quickly and getting those right resources around you to be able to identify how to fix that on the technical side, and then making sure that the leaders around know what's going on, understand what it's going to take, because they're going to be able to help the path forward in terms of helping to isolate those resources you really need working, and also to make sure that everyone knows, okay, we're going to be able to fix this by tomorrow, right? And then there's a path forward, and it makes things go a lot smoother.
Yeah. Jordan, in your role, do you have to deal with mitigation in those kind of circumstances, or?
Oh yeah.
Nice little softball there.
Yeah, we tend to find like a lot of things that are inevitably, they're, like you said, they're things that you can't always predict. So usually it ends up mostly being on like the PS and ES side, helping with those go live weekends, but we do have on-call support engineers who are kind of pulled into the loop and made aware of that beforehand, and other things like that. So I think our goal with those go live weekends is just to make sure we're available for exactly what Alicia said, which is, you know, triaging the issue, helping to get the right resources on it, to get them in a better spot so they can continue with the project that they need to complete.
Yeah, nice. Marriott, you talked us through some of the hallmarks of successful implementations. Are there recurring or common issues that you see as well?
For sure, I definitely agree with Alicia on, one of the most common challenges is the availability. It can be the availability of the core team as well, the identity team, but even more than that with the stakeholders. And that, of course, like identity project cannot be done by anyone in isolation. It's a collaboration. It's a collaboration with the customer, with their core team, but also with all of the stakeholders. And that can be very challenging at times, for sure. So, and that can have a really significant impact on time frame. And I'm always really focused on time to value, so it can be very frustrating when something that's like at the surface of it should be a very quick task to do, but it's just getting the time of the day can take a lot of time. So that I would say is the most common thing that we come across.
Yeah.
Availability. Yeah, I see that in support too. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've seen is like missing awareness or user training. So you have the solution in place, but people just are not aware how to use it. Like you have these access reviews running, emails are sent out to the managers, but the manager doesn't really know what exactly he's supposed to do. Like they don't follow processes, or I mean that's just one example, but and not just people directly involved with the solution, but also teams like if you have Workday team, or you're working with a bunch of applications, like you're doing AD, you're doing any other target sources. So those teams also need to have some sort of awareness that we have a IAM solution in place, and this is how it works. And if you're going to change something on your side, it is going to impact us, because that's where our data is being driven from, right? So they cannot just make changes. And same goes the other way around also. Like if we are driving something from IAM, we need to let the teams know that hey, this is the new program coming in place, and this is how things will work going forward. So you set up that ecosystem where everyone's involved, and that's how it works together.
Change control processes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of companies have very good processes around change control, but absolutely, I mean, we see that, and not so much within and during the project, but then at the go live, after the go live, in maintenance mode. Changes can have huge and unintended implications on the identity, and not always pleasant surprises. So definitely that's one of the things that maybe on the good best practices and in successful customers projects, we do see strong and robust change control processes in place, and that's the way we don't kind of have those unpleasant surprises.
Unfortunately, that's something that we've encountered in support. Is one of the number one things that comes to mind for me was I had a customer who updated their provisioning policy via an API call, and unfortunately they did it directly in production. They didn't have the processes that you mentioned where they would have done it in Sandbox first and then tested it. And because provisioning is so critical to the product, whenever you change that, it pushes all the changes to the downstream systems during aggregation and attribute sync and things like that. And so whenever you make a change to the provisioning policy and it goes wrong, you can potentially just have bad data in all of these source systems. People may not be able to access things in Active Directory-based applications, and some other stuff like that. So yeah, definitely change control and testing, super important.
Absolutely.
Oh. Okay. So I think you actually just answered my next question for you. So that was really good. Let it go.
I was ready.
Yeah. So again, this one's for everybody. What are some key lessons learned that can help customers avoid pitfalls when they're implementing or going live?
So one thing which comes to my mind is while we are doing the implementation, we are also focusing on configuring things, but at the same time we should also give somewhat importance to the data that's going to come in. Because if you have any data quality issues or any bad data that just went unnoticed between instances, that's just like an apocalypse waiting to happen. because bad data can be harmful. So like I'll just give an example. So we have this RBAC setup where we have certain roles defined, and then the criteria for these roles are dependent on the data that's going to come into our system. And then we just didn't expect, and there was like like maybe a hyphen or something very small changed, which no one noticed, that hey, this attribute is going to come in like this, and then it was different in sandbox, right? So it's like we go live, we go to production, and then we see, oh, there's a lot of licenses getting triggered. And then when we got to triaging and try to find out what the issue was, it's like it turns out we had all the right configurations, but it was just data. Right, so you definitely should also look at the data quality issues, try to analyze them beforehand, so you don't end up in this position. So that's one of the lessons learned.
Especially, I think, with stuff that's related to licensing, like you mentioned, because someone with the wrong type of data and their attributes could automatically qualify for a role or an access profile, and then they are given the access and that licensing improperly. So.
I think the biggest thing I would say is for customers when they start their implementation journey to be open-minded, to understand what's been before, how things have worked, but also understand and listen to what the new technology can do, and not insist that everything that's old must be in the new platform.
Exactly the same way as it was there before.
It probably can be done, but maybe
doesn't mean
should
that it
not
should be done.
because it can be so complicated. It can be very difficult to maintain and really not be necessary. So just be open to re-examining those processes and making sure that they are appropriate for where you are today.
Absolutely agree. Like compromise isn't always, like you said, it's not about like meeting the requirement. It might be met a different way, but compromise is always like, it's not yes or a no, but it might be like not now. So it comes to the roadmap. So how much do we want to delay the benefit because of like an edge case that impacts it 2%? Like there's definitely that. I agree on a compromise. The other thing that I see that can be challenging is decision making. Often we see, at times we see that there may be like a little too many cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of discussions, but we don't get to the decision. And it's not easy, so kind of identifying okay, we'll hear everybody out, but who makes ultimately the decision up front can help out with that.
So one thing I'd like to add here is like, when you talk about compromise, so, obviously there are ways to attempt a solution. So, you could have a way of meeting a certain process by doing certain customizations, but then at one point you have to make a decision whether you want to go with the things that are there in the box, like what the solution offers, or you want to take a custom route to just be able to meet that process. So that's also, I think, one of the key decisions should always be made, like are you willing to adopt to the new process and just let go of what you had. So I think that also contributes to a good solution.
And what is the long-term impact of the customization, especially on the on-premise side with the upgrades, and also kind of just not considering the right now, but also the long-term impact of that decision.
Exactly.
I liked the way that Alicia put it with maybe we can bring these things over from the old system, but should we do it?
Yes.
Because by moving to an identity solution like this, it's kind of like a new thing, new processes, new protocols, so it's not a bad idea to consider stepping away from some of the older stuff that may not be as relevant anymore with these new processes.
And change is hard. I mean, change is hard for us. Like we tend to be a little bit stuck with the way things were, but having that open mind, as you put it, it's really helpful.
Yeah, because the security landscape is evolving, right? And if you don't evolve with it, you're going to lag.
Yeah.
So you have to be open to change, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that flows really nicely into the next question I had for this group too, and that's, Alicia, I'll probably start with you again. We started the conversation with you where you helped us look at, how is this conversation shifting? How is identity moving to the forefront? And so something that I want to talk about with this group is, what advancements or innovations are you seeing that are really influencing the future of identity?
I think the one thing is, as identity has become more prevalent in more conversations, we're seeing the footprint expand to more integrations, more users, more non-users, right, that are now in our systems.
Right.
And we have greater visibility now into the access they need, the state of the users, and that data that we're collecting is going to have such tremendous capability for us in the future. It's getting consolidated, and with the growth of reporting tools and AI tools, we're going to be able to use that to make better decisions.
Yeah.
And that's going to allow that jump for identity to truly be a business enabler. And if we can get there, then business leaders are going to be more willing to make that investment into identity security because they're going to get that return.
Yeah.
Right, and then what I see is with the help of AI now, because we are in that generation, we can have things like advanced threat detection and good access insights. I think SailPoint already has some of these nice features built in now, where you are able to detect what is a common access, and you are able to also detect whether someone is requesting something they shouldn't be. So all those having all those capabilities, having that insight is really going to be helpful, and it will shape the way forward for having a good security program.
And AI definitely is, it's a broader trend at the moment. Obviously, it's not a new thing anymore, but it's not just impacting the solution, but also the way we implement the solution. So I think while it's already it's not a new trend, but it's still a trend, and it definitely will impact us long time into the future as well. Another very broad trend that we are seeing today already is definitely the shift to cloud.
Yeah.
I'd say just about all of our new customers select our cloud platform. The ones that are still on-premise, either in IIQ or other platforms, I think they're kind of looking into that shift to the cloud. So those definitely two very big trends that are ongoing already.
Do you think that there will be some people who will always stay with an on-prem solution because of their business process or security preferences, or do you think it's kind of inevitable that most people will eventually have to be on the cloud solution instead?
Always is such a long time. So I'd say right now there are definitely still companies that are and do need to stick with the on-premise solution. But like I said, I'd say at least majority of the customers will be moving to cloud. Whether everyone, it's really hard to say. I mean, things are moving so fast that I can't even imagine what will be in, say, 5 years in the cloud space. So really hard I can't picture that.
We do have some organizations that still prefer on-prem, and they never want to go the cloud route. Just because of the security reasons and the compliance that they have to meet. There's no, we cannot. And just to get access to the system, it's even we don't have access as implementers. We have their internal team doing that. So I think definitely we'll have that division somewhere. People will be open to go to cloud, but then there'll always be organizations that would always prefer on-prem.
For a long time, for sure.
I think so.
I think the trend that I see, in addition to the other stuff that you guys mentioned, is it's actually not from the technology perspective as much as the human perspective. I hope that just, as a community across the world, we can all continue to get better about not falling for those human traps like phishing and other items like that. I could probably go on forever about all the different kinds of risks, you know, because ultimately, even with all this amazing identity technology, we still need to rely on our humans at the front line to make sure they're not falling into those traps. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's something we'll continue to see grow, especially as we see these big companies have breaches reported in the news and to their customers. Is you have to watch that human element too. You can't, our product is robust and amazing, but you can't rely on it entirely. So I think we'll see that continue to grow too.
Yeah. It's a callback to Shivari's point that, you know, you have to have a whole culture of vigilance to help this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you cannot have over-reliance on automation, because it's like what I call a double-edged sword. Like, you know, it's always good to have automated stuff, but then it's just, you know, something bad waiting to happen if things go wrong. Like, you know, it can be a human perspective to it, or, you know, just something wrong somewhere. Like, you know, any other person coming in and just trying to mess up with the system. You know, you cannot detect that. I mean, no AI tools will be able to, you know, do that for you. You just have to do it manually.
So how do you guys have any strategies that you employ to stay on top of these emerging trends that we're seeing, or how do you stay up to date?
Well, a big one that we do several times a year is we have very in-depth training on the social aspects of security. So, you know, what to look for with phishing emails, which are becoming more intelligent by the day, especially as AI has grown and made it more possible to format all of the grammar and spelling correctly, and other things that used to be more obvious. I think it's really just about the vigilance and the training and repeating that training. And I feel like as going through part of that with my job, it also helps me improve my understanding of those things, so I can warn people that I know about it, like friends and family and other stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, working at SailPoint, certainly we have an advantage on that. I think things are just changing so fast that it's about like having the time to keep up, but there's definitely ample of training and opportunity for us to stay up to speed with things like that. But it is not easy. It is not easy.
Yeah, I just think not only SailPoint, but all organizations today have some sort of cyber security training in place, which is mandatory for each and every person, because, you know, it's not just email phishing. You know, it's all like the social media attacks or in-person scams, SMS scams. So, you know, you have to have that knowledge, and you know, you should be able to detect those threats, and, you know, having the knowledge would definitely help to figure out whether it's a scam or, you know, it's a legit message. You should be able to detect that.
Or even the physical things that AI can't help us with, like someone trying to sneak in behind you at the front door of the office, you know, stuff like that.
I think for me, I think there are two things. One, I would say, is just trying to find those resources for yourself and make yourself a little plan that, okay, I'm going to keep up with this because I'm going to follow this person on LinkedIn that's making really relevant posts, or I'm going to follow this blog, or I'm going to attend this conference, or I'm going to go for this certification. Our employers will always have goals for us, but we also need to have those goals for ourselves. And then the other thing I think that challenges me is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, and who love to dig in. And there've been great conversations here. I have a great team at home, and they're always posting about something, and I'm like, wait, I need time to catch up with what you just did, because I was busy. But that gives me motivation to learn more.
Priority, like just carving out that time for that. It's I agree.
Do you have any experts that you follow in particular, or that you think are really informative?
Taking notes.
I don't know. There's a few. I guess the Identity Jedi is one that a lot of people like to follow. But you can also just do things like on LinkedIn of see who
Yeah.
who your friends are following,
Yeah.
right? Is one way I find some of those things.
I think to stay up to date, we mostly see posts on LinkedIn, and then you also study from the past breaches that have happened.
Yeah.
So that's where you get your lessons learned, like why it happened,
Yep.
and then how it could have been prevented, or what you do to avoid that in the future. So I think those are the best stories we can always learn
Yeah.
from.
I think I probably get a lot of things off of LinkedIn, but I also seem to find a lot of bleeding edge news about tech problems on Reddit, because there are so many sysadmins and tech people that like to go on Reddit. There's a plethora of subreddits on there that just have all of this like information about different ongoing things, and people will share news articles related to tech breaches and stuff like that specifically. So that tends to be it for me.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to talk about with this group is you may have noticed that we have an unusual setup here. We have all women on this panel, and I am incredibly proud of that. And that was intentional. When I was approached about, hey, let's make sure that we're doing something to have this conversation around seeing more women, and not just in identity, but in tech in general. I thought, let's just have a really interesting conversation about a cool topic that's relevant to everyone attending Developer Days. And then let's have all of the amazing women that are leading this conversation or leading an identity with us. And my hope is that we see more of this next year, and not just at Developer Days, but across the industry. We want to see more women leading this conversation. So I am incredibly privileged to have been having this conversation with each of you. And I think I want to take a quick time to actually ask you, what are things that you think that we can be doing from your experiences as a woman in identity? How do we create opportunities, or how do we help foster the next generation of women that are entering into this field?
I was really heavily involved in something in college called Society of Women Engineers. They have chapters all over the United States, and something that we did for that exact purpose was we would have these outreach programs to girls in grade school, elementary through high school, and we would put on these conferences, and we do like fun activities that tied into engineering or programming that were age appropriate for however old they were. And I had a lot of interactions not only with the girls that seemed to getting excited about these engineering things, but also their parents. They really wanted the insight from like current college students in engineering, like, what is this like for you? What's it like for women? Because honestly, I'd be in a class of like 150 people and there'd be like 7 women in the whole thing. And I love my male coworkers and my male friends, but there's just something empowering about seeing someone who's like yourself being successful. It makes you feel more empowered to do that thing too. So
I couldn't think of like a gender specific advice. It sounds like though that it starts from already like education and encouraging like people early on, women early on, girls early on, to seek a career in IT. I think the opportunities are there. It's just like come and grab them. Maybe one thing just to kind of make a point of, there are both technical and non-technical career options within identity and IT overall. Like I said, I've had almost 20 years of career in IT. I've loved all of it. I've had a chance of working with amazing women, such rock stars like my panelists here. And all I can say is like really to encourage seeking that career, because it's really rewarding.
Yeah. And I think taking away from this conversation of like, oh, well, girls aren't as interested in STEM, or, girls prefer reading or writing. And I think that's part of how we start building that pipeline and making sure that they feel welcome and that they're really able to tap into skill sets that can lead them into this. Yeah. Shawari, anything from your perspective?
So I just think like obviously no gender bias, but then women sometimes are at war with themselves. Like they just keep thinking internally like should I step up? Should I go and ask someone? So my advice would be don't be afraid. just go out there, don't be afraid to, reach out to your mentors or managers, just speak up, I think that's what the best thing, because unless you make your progress yourself, you don't take the first step, you are just going to be there.
Yeah.
So, you should be, ready to take that step, and that's what will keep you going.
Yeah.
I really like that. I feel like I'm not sure if it's because I'm a woman or not, but I feel like I get imposter syndrome, especially surrounded, not with as many women as would be like ideal for me. So I don't know, getting past that fear and that imposter syndrome and asking those questions is a great way to grow.
Yeah.
And I think the thing I would say to your point about not seeing the women around you, whether it's in school, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's in a presentation, is if you love it, if you like the challenge of this industry, don't worry about it. Yeah. Be you and be a rock star at what you're good at, and you're going to get respect for the quality of what you produce. And if somebody doesn't like that you want to wear a skirt, oh well. I don't necessarily, want to wear what you're wearing. So don't worry about those things and just go for it. Because that's what's going to make it more acceptable and more commonplace.
Yeah, I do think it's an even playing field. So it's, we're all judged by what we bring into the table and how we perform. So,
yeah, I think something I've really benefited from, because just like you mentioned, whether it's school or work, oftentimes it's me and 15 men, or it's me and maybe like 1 or 2 other women on Teams calls or in rooms. But I've worked with some really incredible men on my team that are great about seeing that maybe sometimes when I don't see myself represented, I'm not as comfortable speaking up, and they're very good about being like, hey, what do you think about this? And I think having, men watching or men on our teams knowing like, hey, make sure that we get credited with our ideas and that someone doesn't speak over us, and that maybe we don't feel comfortable speaking up, but if you ask me, maybe pull it out of me, I'm gonna be more willing to share my ideas and my thoughts and move a conversation forward. And that's something that I would say is something that I've benefited from greatly. Yeah, and it's like kind of the combination of being introverted along with feeling like, oh, I'm the only one, and the imposter syndrome that comes with that. So, yeah, awesome. Any additional thoughts here? No. Yeah. Well,
I see organizations also making the shift. So, providing flexible work hours, being able to, get your maternity leave or any kind of other break you need. So, I think we are in a good place where nowadays we are not as underprivileged as we were. So, definitely there is that recognition, and, everyone's aware that, we need to promote women into like maybe tech or non-tech.
Yeah.
But I definitely like that, organizations do recognize that now.
Yeah.
Even just walking in here and knowing there were fewer women here than men, one of the first things we saw when we came into the large room was there's a sticker on one of the vending machines that's very large that says "Women in Tech."
Oh yeah.
And it was, and it was like, I don't know why it got placed there. It's both a bunch of other stickers, but it caught my eye.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, I literally took a picture there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for having this conversation with me. This has been incredible. I think we've all learned a lot. I think it's been great to revisit things that were potentially didn't go as great or went really well, and we've walked away with some good best practices and dialogue around that, but then also getting to help shepherd this representation. And I'm really excited to see this not be the exception anymore, but to really become the norm, and that we see more women on our panels in the future. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.